All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be our GCP demo. So this is going to take us a little while to go through. I'm anticipating this is probably about 11 or 12 minutes long. Okay. So after you've redeemed your coupon code, you'll have a screen that looks something like this. You'll see at the top it has the course listed. Now, because I've had other classes, I'll see other ones listed. You'll only see 484 unless you've had one of my other classes. You're going to want to do the work in 484, but if you need to, you can do practice work in your old sessions until your credits run out. But as we explore, you can see on the right here, where I've highlighted, that's where the credits show up after you've added them. So you'll see that you'll have $100 in credits. As long as you're shutting things down at the end of your homework assignments and not keeping them running continuously, that should be more than enough money. If you forget, you just need to let me know and I can get you additional credit. You'll also see projects. Now, there might be a default project that's set up for you, but it may be helpful to just go ahead and create a project specifically for the homework and then a project specifically for the project, just to keep things separate and a little easier for you to organize and find, but you don't have to. So in my case, I'm going to create just a general project for this class, and I'm going to assign it to my billing account for 484. And then once it shows up here in a second, it'll take it a second, but once it shows up, I'll be able to select that project, and that's where all the resources are going to be. They'll be tied to the billing account where I have the coupon codes for this course. Okay. So then this is the dashboard screen that you see when you log into the Google console. And the Google console is going to be where you do homework assignments and potentially project work as well. Okay. All right, so what you can see here is if you have resources set up already, like compute or storage, you'll see them on the resources area down below. And you can see there's a lot of other helpful information on this screen. Now, this menu here on the left is where you go to do things. So for the purposes of the first homework, you're going to go out and create a virtual machine. But later in the course, we're going to make use of these other things that are listed here on the left. Okay. So if I want to go out and create my first VM, I'm going to go find the Cloud Compute Engine menu on the left. It looks like a little computer chip. That's where I'm going to go to for creating my first instance. But some other areas, there's storage, databases, networking related things like virtual private clouds, firewalls, etc. Okay? So that's where we're going to find that type of thing on the left side. And there's a variety of other tools out here that you can play around with and explore in your own time. Later on, we will talk about identity management. And then some of you are interested in big data or data analytics, and so there's some options there for you to explore outside the context of the class. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the compute engine. And we're going to go up to VM instances. And for this first homework, and just to get introduced in the course, we're just going to do a very simple virtual machine. So if you recall, we talked about virtual machines are a way to virtualize computer hardware. So here, Compute Engine allows us to go ahead and create a virtual machine. And in this case, we're going to be creating a standard type of virtual machine, not a container. There are other areas inside of GCP where we would create containers. So what this is going to allow us to do is create a VM running some flavor of Linux or Windows. Now for our class, I am not going to have you do anything with Windows. That being said, you are welcome to, for your project, you're welcome to consider using Windows in addition to Linux. Okay? So when we're ready to actually create the VM, first of all, we've got to wait for the Compute Engine to initialize. This shouldn't happen every single time, but it's the first time that we're doing this for our account, so it's taking a little longer. And you'll see at the top that there's a link to the Compute Engine documentation. One of the things you'll be able to find on for any of the services here in Google is there's a lot of information out on the internet, both via documentation and in videos. Later on, I'm going to show you what some of the other features are. For example, up at the top part of the screen, you'll see a little square box with what looks like an arrow. It's kind of next to the question mark there. We're going to use that later on in a few weeks to do other methods to access our systems other than through the graphical interface. Okay. So what we're going to do in this first homework assignment is we're going to create a virtual machine. So we click the create button, and we're going to create a virtual machine that runs some flavor of Linux. And so here we would give it a name. So my recommendation is to name it something that you'll know what it is. And then you can create labels. So one way to use labels, it's a key value pair. So you have some sort of key and then some sort of value. So we could label things as environment equals, and then the value could be homework, or environment equals project. Okay, so we can use this as metadata to help us organize our machines. And the value of this will become clearer as we go through the course, because this allows you to really leverage automation tools. Because now you can do searches for, show me all of my resources that are in environment homework, and kill them off. Okay, so there's a lot of things we can do. Now, for the region, I recommend you stick with a region in the U.S. They tend to be free or cheaper. Okay, and areas outside of large metro areas are going to be cheaper, so you're going to burn down less of your coupon code if you choose something like Iowa, where there's not a lot of demand. Okay. And then you can choose the type of computer you want to get. So there's different levels of processors. I just leave the default. The machine type, you can leave the default, you can reduce it. I'm choosing to reduce it because it's just a test virtual machine. I don't need a lot of capacity. Okay. So this one is going to take about a little over $4 a month for my credits, and build to that. Then I can also specify the type of boot disk, and I can change that. So the default is Debian Linux, but I can also go pick something else like Ubuntu or Red Hat or CentOS. Okay. Ubuntu and Debian are one flavor, they're kind of one family, and then Red Hat and CentOS are another family. And I talk about this in some of the materials for this week. You can also increase the size of your disk if you need, but I just chose to keep it small to keep the cost down. Okay. If you plan to run a web server, you're going to need to make sure that your firewall allows web traffic, so you'd want to click the two boxes for allowing that particular traffic. Okay. You're going to click create, and it's going to take a few minutes to create. Okay. But once it's created, I'll be able to go and start and stop that virtual machine. I can even terminate it if I want to permanently remove it. So after you're done connecting to it, and you're going to connect to it in just a second, you'll notice it has two IP addresses, an internal and external. When you connect from the internet, you're going to be using that external address. If you're connecting within Google, say you have two virtual machines, you're going to then connect from the internal to the internal IP from your other machine, most likely. Okay. And then you're going to connect using SSH. So for the purposes of getting you up and running quickly, you're going to use a web-based SSH client for this instance. Later on, if you want to go try to get this running on software on your computer called SSH software, you're welcome to do so. Okay, and I'm sure we'll have some students who have done this in my other classes who'd be more than willing to help out with tutoring and things like that to help get that set up. Okay, you're going to go ahead and click here and say Open in Browser Window, and this is going to open a new window. But if you wanted to do your own SSH client, you choose that last option. Okay. And you'll notice my browser is blocking the pop-up, so I actually have to go up to the top and allow the pop-up window to come up. So if you have an issue, nothing appears, check that your pop-ups are allowed. Okay. And so what this is going to do, this is going to connect through a browser window over SSH, which is a secure shell protocol, to give you access to the virtual machine that you just created. Okay. And in week 2, we actually go through how to use the command line. My main concern for this week is that you're able to get a VM set up and that you're able to get SSH working, because without that, you're not going to be able to proceed with the week 2 material. Okay. Now, it takes a moment each time you launch the web version of the SSH. Okay. And there we go. Now we have a command line. So at this point, you're not going to be able to do anything unless you do know the command line. So at this point, you could just type exit and hit return, and this will exit out of here. But let me show you a few things. First of all, my first VM is the name of it. It's running Debian. Your username would be there where I've highlighted, and then that's again the machine name. When you get to the week 2 material, you're going to use this VM and potentially your Amazon VM to run through the second homework activity. And so here I'm just running a couple commands to show you what's here, but this is covered for the most part in the next homework activity, okay, and then in the materials for preparing for that. Now, a couple of things to mention are the profile file here is how you can set up a customized profile for your own preferences. It's kind of like a preferences area. And then you've got the .ssh directory, and this is where you have your keys and what keys are authorized to access the host and things like that. And then the things on the left there, the DRW, that's the permissions on file. So if you can write a file, it would have a W. If you can read it, it would have an R, and if it's a directory, it'll have a D. I'll cover that in more detail when we get to the command line, so don't worry if you don't know what that means. Once you're done, you can go ahead and exit out by typing exit, hitting enter, and closing the window. And then you can go ahead and go back to the console window and shut down your virtual machine. Okay.